Well, well, well. There is nothing like a Game of Thrones wedding. I will say. Welcome back to another House of the Dragon after show here. And I will say, not to have a jab at another show right off the gate here, but this is a mid-season episode. This, ironically, is more than even just a mid-season episode. This episode, if you're familiar with the books at all, even if you're not, no spoilers for any future episodes by all means. But this is, I even mentioned this last week, I think, just when the preview for this episode happened. And this is absolutely the catalyst of not just the rest of the season, but the rest of the series, really. This episode establishes just every pretty much political beef that, I mean, there'll be more to come, obviously, but everything that's going to propel the series forward pretty much happened in this episode. That's pretty cool. That's fun. That's good times for sure. Before I just continue to rant as well, we are of course accompanied by Mr. John Knight. John, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. I went with the glasses at your suggestion tonight. Anybody that saw our stream last night knows I was having some issues with my contacts, so
This way to
went with the
go.
glasses. Hopefully, I won't look like I'm trying to dig my eyeballs out all episode again.
Well, the more important question is how's your sinus issue?
Oh, yeah, that's not any better. I'm
Man,
just It's gonna take a few days, but I'll get
well,
I'll get there.
I'm sure your sinuses are doing better than Joffrey, the Knight of Kisses sinuses are doing right now. Like,
I mean, his are cleared out at
yeah,
least.
I guess he's not gonna need them too much
He's not gonna
longer.
need him really though.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that was good. That was I honestly like I mentioned this before on the other pretty much I think every installment of the Hot D after shows here is like I've read all the George R. R. Martin books, everything from Dunk and Egg, Fire and Blood, all of them that have been released, obviously. But it was so long ago that like there are things that like I genuinely just I don't remember them, right? So like I don't 100% see the future with this series really. They might change some stuff here and there anyway. It does only make sense to kill someone named Joffrey. That is true. I mean, when you find out that his name is Joffrey, if you weren't familiar with it, I mean, given the reputation of Game of Thrones weddings, let alone how Joffrey's end up doing at Game of Thrones weddings, we kind of maybe could have made an educated guess there that might have happened. My
Mhm.
favorite part, like just offhand, even though, well, I guess he did have some to do, but man, my favorite part was literally just when Damon strolls into the wedding and like Viserys is just staring him down, just like because he's just like you could just see Viserys is just sitting there like he wants to punch him in the face and he hates that he's there, but god damn it, he still loves his brother no matter how much he hates his brother.
Oh yeah.
S- and it's like even though it's like what's he gonna do? Because it's just funny because Damon puts him in such like unwinnable situations. It's like
Mhm.
does he just make a scene and just now this is what we have to deal with? Like Damon getting or Viserys getting all shitty with Damon and Damon getting and like it's supposed to be this wedding, this ceremony. It just and joy and fun for Rhaenyra. Viserys thinks in his head that like I mean, honestly, this is kind of a plague of Viserys's, but he always seems to have these grand plans, and on paper, they're all very good plans. But man, he just never catches a break, does he? Like he's always got just something spoils the plans, man. The poor guy, and like you just I don't know about you, but like I root for Viserys so much, even though I know like the inevitable outcome. But Fatty Constantine or Constantine, however we pronounce it, I think it's Constantine. He just plays the character and plays the part so well that you can't help but feel empathy for the guy.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
brutal.
you can see him consciously forcing himself to smile at every turn. I don't think the guy's ever genuinely smiled in the entire show. I
Oh,
think
I know.
every time he breaks a smile, it comes right before, like, you would expect somebody to just start yelling at people like, "God damn it,
I
what's
mean,
wrong with you people?"
yeah.
Like, and
Unfortunately, he
instead
doesn't get much to smile about.
no, he always has to compose himself and put on a
Yeah.
fake smile and yeah.
The poor guy, dude. Like, 'Cause like I said, this for all intended purposes, on paper, was a monumentous occasion. Uniting House Valerian with House Targaryen, like they said in the episode, like, Corlys said it, Viserys said it, like, but Corlys said himself, like, "We have 50% of the dragons right now, and we're gonna unite those houses," and, like, so just, like, on paper, like, I think it's Lionel Strong, his new Hand of the King, he even said when in the earlier episode on the episode with the hunt, so, like, episode 3, I think, maybe 4, I can't remember. He even suggested the whole Rhaenyra and, Laenor marriage. So, like, even he's sitting there, he's like and now he's Hand of the King, so that's all nice. Also, speaking with Daemon, this is popping in my mind, I just love the scene with, the cousin of his late wife, Rhea, and, just straight up just,
Using
accusing
them,
the shit out of him, yeah, like, did not hold anything back there. That was a really good scene.
but then
My
Damon had
god.
to check him real quick and just
Oh,
put him
yeah.
in his place.
Dude, it was so funny. He walked away with his tail between his legs. Like, he came up there and, like he said, he made a bold accusation, man. He was standing stiff at the beginning of that, but goddamn, he just went limp dick and crawled away at the end of that. Like he just Damon just like, "Huh, well, I'm glad you're here because I wanted to discuss my inheritance, you know? Like, oh, guess I'll see you at the Vale a little bit later." Like, it was just great. Like,
I love how he casually threw in there too. I plan to fly to the Vale. Yeah, just in case you didn't remember, I have a effing
mhm.
dragon, dude.
Hence the tail between the legs shortly afterward. It was so good. Like, Damon
Yeah.
is by far the best. He's my favorite character anyway. It's I love how Matt Smith is playing him, and I too also loved in the after the episode thing, the director even commented on, like, as a viewer, when you see this whole scene at the beginning when he aids in the death of his late wife, um, like, we don't know really whether he's there to kill her or not. Like, and that's just like how Matt Smith like is just playing the role, and it's like not just in this episode by any means. It's like evident through like pretty much all of Damon's actions, which is again just like a testament to how Matt Smith is just portraying the character. Like, you think you know what Damon's gonna do, and like he doesn't necessarily always do that. He might want to. He might even say he's gonna do that obvious thing that we know and most times wants to do, but he doesn't always do it. He does keep you guessing. Like, and there was even that moment in this scene where like he walked away. Like Ryan Condal, one of the showrunners, he even said like he was done with this. Like when she fell off the horse, he was gonna leave, but then she had to go and start talking some more shit. So he's like, "Well, okay, I'll just end this anyway." Like fine, like whatever. like so, yeah. I
Yeah.
know I love Damon.
Yeah, I'm really curious from the showrunner's perspective, from George R.R. Martin's perspective. I mean, clearly George R.R. Martin has written some characters to be bad guys. The
Hmm.
aforementioned Joffrey was a bad guy. Um,
Terrible guy. Yeah.
the bastard son that was married to oh god, it's been too long since I watched or Game of Thrones.
Ramsey Bolton,
Ramsay Bolton. Yeah, thank you. Ramsay Bolton was written to be a terrible guy. Like he's
great
written some
character
bad.
though. I loved Ramsey on screen. He was he was just fun to watch. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah,
As a
yeah,
viewer, I think he's fun to watch, but, Hodel, or Ho it's an L, I think I remember this from last
yeah. It
time.
was an L. Yeah.
Yeah, that is essentially at least how what's being perceived in the show anyway is like but it kinda speaks to my point, like, with Damon, like, you really don't ever know 100% what he's thinking. Like, we think we do, and generally it's kind of obvious what he's thinking, but he does make some of the actions and the way he goes about making his decisions doesn't always necessarily it's not always the obvious choice, but
Well,
in
and
the
it's all,
end, yeah, that's pretty much what he was after.
and there's also that sense of he can lose his temper at any given moment. I mean, like, you don't know how many of these, like, was that move to kill her a calculated move, or did he lose his temper in the moment when she started egging him on about the sheep? Because he was prepared to try and get the king to marry Rhaenyra to him, just based on the fact that Targaryens have had multiple wives before. He doesn't seem averse to breaking with the Westeros tradition of one wife and following the old Targaryen ways of having multiple wives. So
And that was his
I
plan too, he set that
ex-
up.
exactly. So I'm not even sure. I didn't see the after show part, so I'm not sure what the creator said about that part. But I kind of wondered in my own head if she just didn't, for lack of a better way to put it, run her mouth too much, and he was like, "Well, okay, we're gonna be done with this now." Um, because
Mhm,
there was that scene, when he gets the news about the king agreeing to send forces to help out against the Crab King. He
mhm.
lost his shit on the messenger. Like, he just completely lost it. So he has this temper, and so you're not really, at least for me, I'm never really quite sure if it's an intentional, losing it, or if it's or if it's just him. That's just his nature.
He's an agent of chaos, dude. He's
Yep,
literally, like, very Joker-esque, 'cause, like, you
very
and that's
much.
the you just like we were saying, like, you just don't know exactly how he's going to react. He has
Yeah.
plans, he does scheme like the Joker. He
Hmm.
planned the whole rumor to be start with people seeing him with Rhaenyra at the brothel, like, he did that
Hmm.
intentionally. He took her
Sure.
beanie off to make her be seen by people. Didn't We still don't know, the jury's still out, and I forgot to mention this, I don't think we talked about it, last week, but when that scene happened, there is something interesting there because obviously we know that his girlfriend, I forget his name, forget her name rather, but they call her the White Worm. You know, she's essentially a master of whispers, like
Yeah.
Varys was essentially. That's what she's kind of evolved into in that time jump that happened since we saw her last at Dragonstone and whatnot. So it's interesting because we know that they had a relationship at some point. So it makes you wonder, was she strictly working with Otto in that situation? Or was she also plotting with Damon to make that specific information get out to Otto? Because then, if you remember, subsequently after that information was delivered to Otto, he went to the king about it, and that got his ass kicked out. So you
Yeah.
could think that perhaps Damon planned for all that to happen as well by plotting with the white worm, I can't remember her name, but what that
He
her
was
actual
moving the
name is.
chess pieces
Yeah,
moving the chess
exactly.
pieces around. Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, he needed it to be legit, so he made all of that happen, but then the kid went there to do that, and, like, so that's a possibility, like, we don't really know, like, maybe he was kinda conspiring with the white worm to, making a move to get Otto out, essentially. So
Mhm.
I don't think I remembered to mention that last week, and I just because of the more plotting that Damon is doing, it just kinda jogged my memory with it, right? Because like Hodel said now, he just pretty much set in motion the events for him to no longer be betrothed to somebody, so he's now open to marry Rhaenyra if, they ever so choose to, and
Mhm.
he's set to inherit lands of his own now, which is
Mhm.
also a win for him. That brings him more power, that brings him more political sway with the other houses in the kingdoms, so it's good stuff. Real good stuff.
What was his I don't know the best way to describe it. What was his interaction with Corliss's other with Corliss's daughter at
Mhm.
the dance? What was that? Was he pursuing her, or was he just I was a little I was trying to kind of figure out for myself what that meant. Why they had that conversation the way they did. I might
I
have to watch
think
it again.
no, no, you're right to think that. Not this is no like I said, no, I'm not gonna spoil anything with books, and like I don't genuinely know. I don't think that was like a legitimate thing because it's Damon, but I think he's playing the game, right? Like I think that's what that was meant to be. Like he's Damon, he likes messing with people as it is. but
Mhm.
being, nice and kind of flirtatious with a Valerian of all people
Mhm.
is a smart thing to do in general. Like if, and yeah, remember too, they're family. Like
Yeah,
they all grew up together. So
yeah,
like they have even though we haven't really seen it on screen, like with them all in particular, but like they obviously have a rapport together as it is. So I think they were more so than anything just kind of playing coy with each other, you know? So
okay,
I don't think it was anything that anyone would really need to read into, but it was definitely something they included in the show. So it's obviously my interpretation is pretty much there just to establish that like they have that good of a rapport with each other more so than anything. Very
mhm,
similar to how Rhaenyra and Laenor were when they were walking on the beach, right? Like, we had never actually seen them together, right? They were at the only time we saw them even in the same general vicinity was in the first episode at the initial tourney, but up until that point, we had actually never really seen them interact. So for them to be able to, like, walk around here on the beach and have a pretty, like, grown up, real adult, like, just conversation about, like, "Look, neither of us want this, but our parents want it. It's for the better of the realm if we do this to begin with, so we'll just go ahead and do it. And whatever
like,
you want to do in your free time, that's fine. Like I'll do the same. Like
yeah,
like they just essentially just said like, yeah, we'll do this and we'll have an open relationship. We all win. Like whatever. Like that's good. So but again, it just shows that they already had a rapport with each other for them to be able to approach that and not be like all weirded out and shy and like, like, oh, like mad at the situation. Like, cause even Laenor says, like, at the beginning, just like, something along the lines of just like, it's not that I don't like have anything against you, cousin. Like, he likes you, essentially saying that I like you as a person. Like, like it is what it is. Do I want to marry you? No, because I like dick. But that aside, so that was one thing I actually did forget about though, was, that he was gay. Like, see, and that's one like, small things like that, like, I'm forgetting some of this stuff, and I completely forgot. I didn't know when that first happened if that was something they, like, added or if it was, like, from the books and stuff. So, like, I see and I like being, like, I can still be surprised, and I like that. It's fun.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, Sir Kristen, kinda shot his shot there, didn't he? He went ahead it didn't work out too well for him, but
You know?
I'm assuming that his character continues on because it looked like the queen stopped him there at the end, but,
Mhm.
that dude, I was actually kinda surprised at his reaction to everything. I thought he would hold it together a little better than he did. Well, obviously, a lot better than he did. Um
Yeah, he didn't do too well there at the end, did he?
Because it seemed like things were gonna work out as well as he ever could have hoped for, but
In his situation, yeah.
barring her doing what he wanted and, abandoning her post and leaving for Essos, right? He wanted to go to Essos and then
Yep.
travel the world, which is always interests me when they bring up this fact that there's this whole world out there. This is only what, 7 continents, and like how many continents are there, and like
Mhm.
how big is this world? Because I always tend to think of the 7 continents as kind of the whole Game of Thrones world, but apparently not. Apparently there's a much larger world out there too.
There is a it's funny, like, there's this whole thing, like, amongst all of the people of, like, Westeros in particular, where they don't really leave that continent, and, like, there's this whole I forget what the name of this character was from the books, but there's this legend that there is one person who is said to have, one of the Targaryens who was said to have flown across the sea and got to the other side because they always say like what's west of Westeros, right? Like that was like the thing that
Sure.
Arya always said and whatnot. So, but there was this legend that one of them may have, and then I'm trying to find like a high res map to pull up. I really just need to save one. Um, but presumably, all that would have happened was like given the world is round, it would just end up if when you fly west, you would eventually just come onto the other side of Essos, right? Because they don't. I don't know how at this point in time they haven't figured out that their planet is round, given the fact that they have dragons and can fly, and for presumably a long period of time. And then
Yeah.
um, like you'd think people like Corliss, who have like this giant navy, would at some point like I don't know, just
Do
sail
some
for a bit.
exploring
Yeah,
the
just
same
kind
way
of
that
go and do it, like just like a
the same
normal
way
person
Columbus
would.
did, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like just go take a look around, see what you find, like, and you'd
Find
eventually
new
see
trade
like,
routes.
yeah. Because
Yeah.
once you got to a certain point at the end of Essos, if you just kept going, you would just eventually be back in Westeros and just there you go. Like now we figured it out. What's Westeros? Essos is because it's a
Mhm.
big fucking circle.
Yeah.
But it is just like kind of an interesting thing that they haven't really gone out and done that far much. And that always makes me wonder too, like brought this up maybe just a while ago, but like the world and the lore, I made the comparison with like Tolkien and like Game of Thrones, like George hasn't he's left a lot of that stuff to be ambiguous and like intentionally doesn't like have the characters know about this stuff to make it seem like I don't even know really the real answer for it. Maybe just is he hasn't gotten there yet, perhaps. But like a part of me thinks it is just because like it's more of just more interesting when some things are kind of left unknown, right? Like with
Mhm.
Tolkien, you know everything about that. Like, you know who God is, like, you know that God created the Valar, and then the Valar, and they add the song, and then every little detail about how the world of Middle Earth and everything was created. You don't know anything like that with Game of Thrones stuff, right? Like, even with, the characters in the Game of Thrones, the original series and the books, they mention, like, the Andals and the First Men, and then the Children of the Forest, and, like, all these things, like, predated Westerosi people, right? So the assumption is that there was a long night way back when that wiped out the children of the forest and the Andals and the first men and all that. And there was this big, war against the White Walkers. And they essentially won that war for the most part, but there was just a long ass winter afterward. And then, so all of history up until the events of Game of Thrones was like very scattered, right? Like that because of all of that. But it's interesting because we just don't have all those answers like we do with, like, Tolkien stuff, for instance.
Mhm. Yeah, I can't imagine, like, it takes George R.R. Martin so long to write these books, and they're so well written and thorough and everything else, and like you said, he's left a lot, but he's also left a lot of stuff vague. He clearly hasn't taken the time to, maybe he has. Maybe in his own head, he's fleshed all these things out. Maybe he's got, you know, rooms full of notebooks to answer all these
Mhm.
questions that he just doesn't put them in the books because he feels they're extraneous, or they would just complicate things or pigeonhole him. But maybe he has, in case he ever decides to. But like Tolkien did all that. Like he laid all that stuff out. Like I can't imagine how much time that dude took to write his stuff.
Oh,
How
yeah.
how how well.
And that's the thing, for my best answer for it for anything, I guess, is just the fact that, if he did write any of it, he'd have to this is why it's taken him so long to write Winds of Winter, like he's kind of a perfectionist. Like, once he starts, like, something, if he were to introduce a thread, he wants to kinda see it out, and then as you start kind of explaining that, there's, like, 10 other things, it's like, "Well, if I'm gonna say that, now I have to explain what that is, I can't just, like, leave it be." So if he starts introducing, like, "Okay, well, let's talk about how the Andals came," and it's like XYZ thing leads to ABC, and it just becomes this big thing, right? And it's
Yeah.
kinda like where, like, Fire and Blood is, like, a weird anomaly because it was just him not novelizing something. It was him just doing bullet points of just like, "Well,
Mhm.
this is what happened here, here, and here." So, like, Fire and Blood's kind of a good example of him doing world building without kind of, going that far back is kinda the only difference, right? He only went back and explained kind of the Targaryen dynasty in that situation and Aegon the Conqueror. But before that, we really have no idea what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I don't think Allison was going to I don't think Allison knows whether or not she took the tea at all. So I don't know if that's what she was doing. I think if anything, I would think that Allison in her position now where if you didn't pick up on it and they kind of explain it in the show, but if you don't the whole her entering with the green dress, they made a big deal about it, and she also noteworthy arrived late, right? That was essentially her saying her wearing the green, the color of House Hightower, her arriving late was all essentially just a big kind of fuck you to Rhaenyra in particular and the king, since Viserys, he finds out that by order of the king, that tea was given to Rhaenyra by the the High Maester or whatever it is. So like the main Maester, and so obviously Viserys was to her and Alicent's mind. Not only did Rhaenyra lie to her about this in some capacity, because like yeah, you could say like she just swore that she didn't do anything with Daemon, but she still lied. And then and to Alicent in her mind, it was still a lie. But then because of the fact that Viserys, her husband, was the one who ordered the tea, the Westerosi plan tea, like that just shows that he was not being honest with her because obviously in her mind, if Viserys sent the tea, then she probably assumes that Rhaenyra confessed to her father that it happened, that she did do it. So Viserys sends the tea. That's probably what's going on in her mind. So her coming in with this green dress and arriving late is her in a very, I guess you could say, quote unquote, subtle way, but obviously not subtle because even people at the wedding commented on it. But it's her essentially distancing herself from the Targaryens and establishing the fact that she's a Hightower, like, period. Like, that's where her
She's
allegiance lies, is with House Hightower.
I think she's also trying to build in, for lack of a better way to put it, she's trying to gather allies to herself.
100%.
She's trying to let House Hightower know that, you know, if things go wrong, I'm going to need you. This is because the one guy even said, "Do you know what color the light or the tower lights up or whatever or something?"
Mhm.
Like I can't remember the exact verbiage he used, but basically what color goes up in the tower at Hightower when there's a call to war, and he said it's green. So like she's almost calling Hightower like be ready because when shit goes down, I'm going to need you. And then I think Sir Kristen, my impression at the end with Sir Kristen was more so that she was going to him and being like, "Look, I know your secret, and I'm going to keep your secret, and I know that you're a faithful and true. You know, when you give your word that you're going to protect somebody, and I'm going to need that. I'm going to need somebody that I can trust wholeheartedly to watch my back because at some point things may go south, and I'm going to need your help." And so that's my assumption there. I could be wrong, but
That's exactly my perception of it as well. Because, like, to your point with her seemingly wanting to actually take follow in her father's footsteps, right? And actually like gain alliances with people and show that she's strong and she can do this and like she's on the same page as everyone else. Her going over to Kristen Cole was essentially her going to appeal to him, right? Like, convince him not to kill himself because we can work together now. Like Rhaenyra fucked you over and put you in a shitty spot, and she also fucked me over and is putting me in a shitty spot just by existing at this point in time. So, because like Otto told Allison at the beginning, like when she, if and when she is named heir, like when Viserys actually dies, the knives are going to come out. Even though all these people have sworn fealty to her, there's already people who don't acknowledge the fact that she's the heir. Like despite kneeling in any way, shape, or form. Like even as soon as this wedding ceremony started, Jason Lannister comes in and makes a sexist joke about women directly in front of the the
future
queen to
queen.
be. Right? It's just like
Mhm.
immediately like there it is. Like you just like see no further. People aren't really taking it seriously that she is going to be the heir, which is obviously partly why getting her a strong husband, like at least by name, is kind of a necessity at this point anyway. So that's why I like to Otto's point in the same episode that Lionel Strong recommended this wedding to happen. Otto recommended marrying Rhaenyra to Aegon, Alicent and Viserys's newly born son at the time, or like 3-year-old son, 2-year-old. It was 2 at the time. And like that's actually the best plan to prevent any shit hitting the fan. That would have been the best plan. Because
Because
at
then
this
they
point,
become
like
what's the terminology they use? King and something, king and
king and it's consort. King and queen.
consort,
Yeah, so
king
there'd be the
consort.
yeah, queen regent if you're like holding the house or like while the king's away or something, or you're the regent if you're in place while the true heir is selected. But if like since Rhaenyra has been named the official heir, she would be the queen and Laenor would be the king consort, and it would be vice versa. Like right now, for instance, I guess you could say that the queen consort, and by that definition, would be Alicent, even though she's also just the queen. Or maybe it's just a king thing, I guess.
Yeah, maybe I think it might just be a king
It
thing
must
because they
be
can't
because
really
yeah.
they have to distinguish that he has no power, I think,
Mm-hmm.
in that scenario, they have to distinguish that while they may call him king, he has no real authority. All the authority lies with the queen. If it was just king and queen, everybody would assume, because they're sexist, that the guy
Yeah,
that the king held all the power.
of course.
Um, so
Why would they not?
yeah, yeah, of course. But if she married her brother, her stepbrother,
Mm-hmm.
or half brother, right?
Half brother, yeah.
If she married Aegon, then they would both be king and queen.
You know, like that's still technically not. No, it actually wouldn't work that way
You think he'd
because
be king
he
consort if he didn't name him heir?
yeah, because the way they would yeah, exactly, because he named Rhaenyra heir, any suitor she takes would be king consort. If by
So
saying Aegon would be the king if they married, that would essentially mean that he was the named the true heir as soon as he came to a certain age. That's the only way that would be implied, technically speaking.
okay,
It's
so
the only
he'd
way it
still
would
be king,
work.
but the realm would accept it more because they
Oh,
were
yeah.
both the heirs and
100%, yeah.
okay,
Because you have people who see him as the true king because he's the firstborn son, who is and firstborn son by definition to Westerosi, customs is that they are the rightful heir to the house, the king, the whatever castles you have, lands and whatnot. So, since there's only people in the corner for Aegon believing he's the true heir, and then you have the other people who are just fine if Rhaenyra is heir, putting them together just prevents any sort of conflict. Because even if he is still technically speaking the king consort, there's all these other people out there who see him as the true heir. No matter if some people put consort at the end of that title, others wouldn't, and they wouldn't pay any mind to the people who did.
okay,
That's why, like, if Damon and her got together, like that would be really weird for the Westerosi people because of the incest stuff. But then you it's that same dichotomy because there's albeit not as many people out there, but Damon has his own sway. Like people see him as a potential rightful heir because he's his brother. So like had Viserys died and had no sons, like we saw before, he had the opportunity to name Rhaenyra or Daemon. Like that was his only choices, right? So if he had no children and he died, Daemon would be king. So if they were to get married or something, like Daemon had suggested, you would have the same, like a similar situation, really. Like Daemon would technically be king consort, but he has all this support out there. So people would still see it as like, well, they're together, so it's fine. Like you can call him king and like it's not treason. Like it's like but yeah. It's just a sticky situation. And that's what this whole episode really was. It was just like a bunch of conflict and a bunch of stuff being set up for more and more and more conflict. And I really did like when Rhaenys was talking to Corlys, like, post the proposal when, Viserys hobbled the fuck out of there dying. Because that's one thing we haven't really talked about too, is, like, dude is falling apart. Like,
His
way
arm looked rough.
dude, it looked bad. Did you at least see the preview for next week?
Yes.
We forgot to mention, big time jump.
Well, I was gonna say I was waiting till we get to it, but I guess I guess a big shout out to what was it? I'm gonna butcher their names, but Millie Alcock and Emily Carey. There
Yeah,
our Rhaenyra and our Allison, who are apparently done now.
they're done now. Yep. You see, and I even said last week that I think this was gonna be the last time we see them, and I honestly thought that it could have did a time jump right after the wedding, but they ended up having the wedding last quite a bit of time, and they had a lot of
Mhm.
stuff kind of filling in the gaps between the wedding too. So, but yeah, I half expected them just to do the time jump to the older Rhaenyra and Alicent literally in this episode. So, kind of no surprise. We knew it was coming, but they did a great job. Like, I'm, like, honestly kinda like it kinda sucks that they are accelerating time so quickly because,
Yeah.
like, I liked
We
their portrayal of the characters.
yeah.
They're
Yeah,
really good.
they were both excellent actors, and I yeah, I'll miss them. But who knows? These other the two they're taking their older self roles. Maybe hopefully they're just as good. I'm sure with the way they cast Game of Thrones shows, they're gonna
Well,
be
and
good.
one thing to keep in mind is that they obviously, more than likely, from just a logical standpoint, would have casted the older versions first because 'cause they're gonna be in the show a lot longer. So you have to think that they're probably really
Good
good at
point.
it. So, like, they probably casted the younger versions after the fact, and we are just kinda lucky that they ended up doing it so well. Because
Yeah,
in my head canon, I feel like they would've it's just the logical answer would have been, "Well, it's pretty important to get the main 2 we're gonna have in potentially 3 seasons, as opposed
yeah,
to people we're gonna have in 6 episodes, so we'll kinda work backwards after that," kinda makes sense to me, but at the same
sure.
time, the counter argument is that these first 6 episodes are kinda critically important to get people on board with the series, so an argument
Which
could be made that getting them casted first may have been more kinda urgent.
was tonight episode 6? Are we
5.
already at
5, 5,
6?
5, 5.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
6 is tomorrow or not tomorrow, but next week. I wish it was tomorrow, that'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
It actually had something like that happen to me earlier. I went and watched, completely off topic, but I went and watched Harley Quinn, and I guess I didn't watch it last week, so I had 2 episodes to watch. That was, like, a nice surprise. It's always really it's really great with, like, those because 'cause they're, like, 20-minute episodes, so when there's 2 of them, it actually feels like you get, like, a whole big plate of something, so that was nice.
Definitely. That
Yeah, it
was
was really cool.
awesome.
Oh, boy.
So yeah, but we do. We get our big time jump next time. We lose these two actresses, and we'll pick up later. Although it looks like the king has managed to hold on for a while. He is in rough shape, but he's managed to at
Mhm.
least the leeches are doing their jobs. I love that the one guy was like, I've got something that may help that's not quite so intrusive. Nope, the leeches have always worked. We're sticking with the leeches.
The interesting thing with that, honestly, though, is that was, 2 maesters who were having that conversation, and I talked about this before, but in the books not so much in the books, this is more of, like, conspiracy theory stuff, but there is some things that, like, hint at this in the books, but there's supposedly, like, this conspiracy with the High Towers, so, like, Otto and his family and the Maesters, because 'cause they're from Old Town, the Maester, like, citadel is in Old Town, and that's where the High Towers are.
Yeah,
So, it's long believed that there is, like, some what's the word? Like, some collusion with the High Towers and the Maesters, and that there's this big conspiracy to kind of get rid of the Targaryens, because no one likes dragons, and prior to the Targaryens there were 7 kingdoms, everyone was king of their own kingdom, right? So, like, the High Towers were the king of Old Town, and stars for the king of the north, and etc. Like, and they all, when the Targaryens came over, they all had to bend the knee to Aegon because he was going to burn them. And like they don't have a choice because they have the dragons. So to that point, even in this series, every time Viserys had to get some shit done with the Maesters because of his wounds, Otto was always there. And there were always these glances between like Otto and the Maesters a lot of the time. So like one could think and theorize and speculate and put on their tinfoil hat here and think that were, maybe Otto and the Maesters kind of not doing everything they could be doing? Were they kind of aiding in Viserys's death in some capacity by not doing everything they could? Because when that other maester suggests, like, I have this herbal thing that could probably really help him out, the head maester was like, nope, sticking with the leeches.
Yep.
Just killed that right away. So awfully suspicious. Like, it's like someone's like saying this could help. No, we don't need that.
We
Pretty
know
much
what we're doing.
insinuates, yeah, we don't need to help this situation. Well, that's the opposite of what we're trying to do here. Like, well,
Can you see how we're helping? Like we've been
yeah,
helping so well so far.
mhm.
Like
We are doing everything we need to do right now. I assure you, this is for the betterment of the realm, is essentially what they would be saying.
yeah.
So yeah, there's a. So I thought that was interesting too. That stood out because of all that. Before
Yeah.
I forget though, the one thing I did like was after Viserys left, after the marriage proposal happened, Rhaenyra, like, or not Rhaenyra, Rhaenys appealed to Corlys, like, just kind of like this, I don't really want this, like, in the end, because we just know that shit's gonna hit the fan if we do this. Like, she's already at peace with the fact that she doesn't have the throne, right? She's made peace with it. Corlys hasn't really let that go, like, because they were married at the time she was passed over for being, for inheriting the throne. So him being a man in this world, like, he's obviously much more prideful, and he looks at it as an insult to his family more so than it being a woman being passed over. You know,
Yeah.
so
But
I like that.
his legacy is not that of the patriarch of a dynasty.
Hmm.
His legacy is now just kind of the brother-in-law to a dynasty. But if he can
Second
insert
sons.
himself in, yeah, if he can insert himself onto into the lineage of of the throne somehow, then his standing, his legacy becomes much more. I don't know what the right word is.
Profound
Profound. Sure, that
something.
works. Yep.
Well, that's what, like, I really liked the fact that he, like, before Rainey's appealed to him, like, saying, yeah, this is a bad idea because, for one thing, our son's gay. Like, so this, if they go through with this marriage and then he does that stuff and people find out, this family name that you want to be in this more boisterous position is going to come tumbling down. So
I like
that's
how
a problem.
he's also in denial about the whole situation. He's like,
Hmm.
"Hey, he's still young." It's like,
Yeah.
dude, he's not that young.
I know. He literally said, like, once he gets some pussy. Like, that's literally what he said. Like,
There's
betting a
nothing better
woman.
than
Yeah.
betting a woman.
Yeah. Like, you just wait till he gets some of that pussy, man. like seriously. Like, yeah, but then that's not really how it works. But yeah, that shit was funny. But I loved prior to that though, when he was talking to Viserys about, like, well, how's all this gonna work? Like, are we gonna stick to Westerosi customs if they have children? Like, are they gonna be Valerians then? Huh? Like, huh? And
Mhm.
he's just like, nah. Like, the king will be a Targaryen. You can name the rest Valerians, but the king or queen will be a Targaryen. And I liked that Viserys also really re-emphasized his decision to name Rhaenyra in that situation, because
Yeah.
he made the point to say their firstborn, no matter their gender,
Yep.
will inherit the throne.
Yeah.
Because then that's just that that reinforces what his decision was prior. So it makes him not. He didn't say first son because then it just it was just a smart thing to say. It was a
Sure.
smart thing to say, even though it was only for Corliss to hear.
It also sets the precedent that, this isn't a one-off thing. This is the way this is going to work
Yeah, you would think, and you
for
would hope.
now and forever.
Mhm.
Yeah,
As it should, but
sure.
we end up kinda seeing and we get the vibes even that that's not exactly how it ends up playing out in Game of Thrones. No one wanted Cersei to be on the throne, you know? So people are
True.
just stuck in their ways here, dude.
Yep.
But nevertheless, it was a great episode though, man.
I
That's
tell you what, we haven't talked about. We haven't. I mean, we've talked about specific scenes and stuff that's going on. They do such a great job of building tension.
oh,
That
yeah.
entire wedding scene is just a masterclass in building building up the tension of a scene. Like, that there's this, they show everybody looks like they're having a good time, but they do such a good job of giving a glance here or a shot here or a comment here that lets you know that things that not everything is as it seems, and that you're just kind of waiting there. It's this pressure cooker. You're waiting for it to blow,
It was
and
shot
then
really well.
when it does, boy, does it ever. It's a huge.
Speaking of which, I liked actually too that, shout out to, again, our boy Viserys just rotting here, by the way, as I was just
Yeah,
skimming
right.
through, I
Oof,
figured. I
poor
love
guy.
though oh yeah, this is miserable, dude. I love that when the fight broke out, they didn't just like, you were even as a viewer, we didn't know what the fuck was going on. And I
Sure.
liked that because it put us in the situation of all these high kings and lords sitting up here forcing this marriage upon their kids, bringing all these people here just to for a political statement more so than anything, and
Mhm.
they can't even see, like, the repercussions of their actions, right? Like, they're still blind to it. They're the
Sure.
choices they've made, they're still like, they didn't see any of it coming, they didn't expect it to happen, and they literally physically can't even see what's happening during the fight. So, it was actually like, I didn't expect the whole, thing to happen as it did because again, I don't remember every little detail in the book, so, like, I was surprised to see that it was just like, I thought it was actually gonna be more than what it was, given
Yeah.
Game of Thrones weddings, like, I didn't think it was
Sure.
just gonna be Sir Kristen hitting his fucking breaking point, and it's just like, "Nah, this dude threatened me," and I like this too because it wasn't just that he threatened him, I think that, like, he threatened Rhaenyra's safety, and he's already in this position where he feels pretty shitty about everything he's done. He feels stuck. Now he's already confessed to the queen that he broke his oath, and, like, all this stuff's just running through his fucking mind. Like you said, he got turned down by Rhaenyra at the beginning, so he's just like, all this shit. He's been rejected. He's broken his oath. He's confessed his fucking treason. Like, all that. So it's like, it's logical that he did just fucking snap when this little peddly fucking dude who is literally called the Knight of Kisses comes and essentially threatens him. You know what I
That
mean?
was such a weird play too. Like, I like, you've done this. You figured this thing out, and, like, you've got this piece of information in your back pocket here, and you've made, was Lenore,
Laenor.
what's Lenore? You've
Mhm.
made Lenore aware of it. Like, you both are on the same page. You know what the deal is. It's good information to have. Why do you go, like, check the dude with it? Why do you try and, like, tell the dude, like, yeah, I know this about you. Like, that's something you keep in your back pocket, and then you pull it out when you. It was such a weird play from. I guess his motivation was just so that everybody was on the same page, and, if you ever hear anything about us, you better keep it quiet because we know something about you.
Mhm.
I guess the assumption was that Rhaenyra had not informed him of Lenore. What's his name? Lenore?
Laenor.
Laenor.
Yeah.
That had not informed him of Laenor's proclivities. I don't know. So
And
so
I don't even know
anyway, it
if
was.
yeah, I don't even know if like, I didn't really get the vibe that Rhaenyra really like, you could say, I guess, she knew based on that conversation, but I
Oh,
don't know.
yeah.
Do
When
you
he was
think
when
it
she was
was
talking about,
clear?
some people like Goose, and I don't care for Goose, and some
Right.
people like
That's what
this, and I
I could see that being perceived as her also just saying, like, "I know you don't like me and I don't like you," and it not being
oh,
anything more than that too. So, like, I thought the same thing, like, it's kind of on the nose if it is either one, really. Like, it could be that she was insinuating the
it's because
thing,
he
but
even he
also not.
Lenore even has the conversation then with Joffrey later on where Joffrey makes the joke about, "So I'm a goose, or I was the goose," or
Yeah,
something.
exactly, right.
So, I guess she could have just been referencing the fact that there's somebody else that he likes,
For
gender
both of them,
aside.
yeah, and her
Yeah,
too,
exactly,
right?
exactly,
So that's
so
what I'm not 100% clear on that. Like I said, I don't remember the books. It
true.
could literally be perceived as either or, and it's probably not gonna change much in all honesty.
Yeah.
So, who knows? But yeah, I
Either
do
way,
think you're right, it
Joffrey played
was
it wrong. He
yeah,
played it wrong
exactly.
no matter what.
Calculated mistake, but it was a calculated risk to begin with, but I think you were right in the fact that he was just going with the approach of, "I'm gonna put all the cards on the table, so, like,
Mhm.
everyone's on the same page here, fair footing." But
Get ahead of anything before anything might
yeah.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah, because I really don't think he came to pose that as a threat, as it was
Sure, I
more
don't
so
either.
is just to say that, like, "Look, I know about you guys, and you don't know about us, so I'm letting you know that, like, the same thing you got going on with Rhaenyra, I got going on with Laenor. That's it." Like,
Yeah. But
but
I think the way he did it was just
mhm.
I especially in the mental frame that, in the mental state that Sir Kristen was in, he took it.
Yeah, and that's the
Maybe the way it wasn't
calculated.
intended.
Yep, that's the thing, he didn't know that. Had
Yep.
he known all that was going on, like, he doesn't know that he just had this conversation and confessed his treason and shit and his oath breaking with the queen. So, like, he's in a headspace right now where he could be dead tomorrow, and he has no I fucking idea. So he's
Well,
just done with it.
and he took it as
He took it as a threat, I
Joff
think.
well, Joffrey took the whole situation as a good thing. Like, "Hey, I guess I still get to be with Lenore, um, Lenore, and, we get to be together, and he's got this, we knew eventually this was gonna happen, like, this is just the way the world works." He's much more accepting of the situation, where Sir Kristen is fighting against it.
Mhm.
He doesn't he's never going to be okay with the situation, and so they're coming at this whole situation from different points of view, and so anything that comes that anything that any development that comes out of this situation is gonna be perceived quite differently between the 2 of them.
Yeah, they have entirely different goals and mindsets in general, right?
Yeah,
Because like Sir
yeah.
Kristen literally earlier asked her to run away with him. So he's
Mhm,
already because in his mind, he's already an oath breaker at this point. He hasn't done anything really. I mean, he's committed treason by deflowering the princess, and he's an oath breaker. So, and as he said to Alicent at the time, like, I ask you please just to have mercy. He didn't even say please, just he asked if, show me some mercy and just kill me
mhm.
instead of torturing me, please. So he's already like kind of accepted that he's accepted death at that point in time. But then the fact that he's spared afterwards, if you're in that situation, it just fucks with your head. Because you're just
Sure.
sitting there like you don't know when, but you know it's gonna happen, right? Like at any point in time, Allison can be in a bad mood and just say, "Well, hey, Sir Kristen, you fucked Rhaenyra." And just because, like, for her own political game, she could go and just spread that out if she wanted to. And so Kristen's sitting here just like he's just it's a tea kettle essentially, and
Mhm.
it finished like it was done.
Yeah.
He didn't have any more time to deal with that shit. And did he make a good choice? No, it wasn't a good choice. But I don't really know who made the worst choices here in this whole episode. It's kind of hard to say. I like that after all this was happened too, after it all blew up, Viserys with his grand plan, this big old wedding ceremony that just went up in flames, decides because they said there was going to be a 7-day ceremony here and leading up to and ending with the marriage.
Yeah.
After this broke out, everyone left. They probably kicked them all out, obviously, and then he decides to have a shotgun wedding. Like, it's
Mhm.
over. Like he's just
Just
getting
get
it
it
fucking
done.
done. It's over. We're done. And it's like you literally see that that's exactly the mindset because he fucking collapses after this.
Yeah.
Like as soon as it's over, he's done. Like he's thank God I'm out. There we go. Like I did
Yep.
my part. He's just finally able to rest. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like even if like it was just physical exhaustion, it's like it's just he goes through so much shit. You just feel so bad for him. That's honestly one thing too. Speaking of losing the younger Alicent and Rhaenyra, I'm gonna be bummed when Patty Constantine and Viserys have to part ways because that's obviously coming, right?
Sure. Sure.
'Cause
Yeah,
that's
it'll be
gonna suck.
disappointing to lose him, but
Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of true Game of Thrones fashion, right? We just people come in, people leave. Just
he at least we know he's coming. He will usually they're shocking. Usually they're kind of
that's fair.
like, "Holy shit, they just killed that person."
Yeah.
To be fair with him, like, they're not even hiding it. They're like, "This guy's falling apart," you know? It's not a question of if, it's a question of just when with him.
Exactly. It's just when's this old guy gonna just fall apart? And that's honestly one thing that I thought was pretty interesting when the um preview for next week comes up, because it's a significant time jump.
Yeah.
Like,
He looks rough. They do some makeup work on him, don't they?
oh yeah, like he's like hella bald now. Lionel Strong, the hand of the king, is hella bald. The older Alicent and Rhaenyra are there, so like and then on top of that, if HBO decides it wants to load, if I'm remembering the trailer correctly, they were talking about Rhaenyra's children and multiple children. So I don't know if this was like in the next episode or coming up later in the season, like looking ahead, because they have
Uh-huh.
done that and with some of the previews before. It just says like in the weeks ahead as opposed to in next week's episode kind of thing.
Mhm.
So I'm not 100% sure if that's all going to be in one episode, as in the next episode. But
They
if it
it
is,
in the special feature section of that episode, like, where they list all the where they break out everything,
mhm,
it is listed as just the preview for episode 6, so,
well then, yeah, that's a huge time jump then.
yeah.
Well, I guess it doesn't have to be too. I guess it kind of depends. It would have to at least be multiple years at the very least, because we're looking at enough time to pass for Rhaenyra to have multiple children. We don't know if it's two or three. So I can't remember if she has two or three, but we know it's at least multiple.
Mhm.
Um, and everyone who has hair no longer does. So that's a pretty long period of time at that point, I would think. But you have to think as well, I guess, like Viserys is so in such rough shape. I mean, it may not even be that far. It could be like 3 or 4 years, and she could still have two kids at that point in time.
Yeah.
So so I don't know. But for them to have to age them up and everything, like I'm thinking that this might be like a 10-year jump, is what I think it might be.
That would make sense, just because I had to look up the actresses' names that were played the younger versions, but when you look at the older versions, the older actresses are about a decade older than the younger ones, so that would
Mhm.
make sense that that was kind of the time jump they're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Some reason, like, this is all I'm getting on HBO right now. It's just and now it wants to load. That's great. Now the music's playing. Like, this whole time I've just been trying to get to this stupid. I need to start just recording the episode so I can just skim through it. I just don't
Yeah.
wanna deal with having to free up. I got so little space on my multiple hard drives because of all the video editing shit that happens.
Yep.
I just don't feel like having to download it is a pain in the ass. Yeah, but I can't remember. Yeah, but look at this man. He looks so rough, man.
Yep.
Ooh, it's sad. There was one child, and then we saw two that. Oh, I guess this is a good indication. So there's Rhaenyra with a child, right? But then this is Aegon,
Oh, is it?
Alicent's Aegon. Yeah, so obviously would have been about 10 or so years, right?
Sure.
Because Alicent, well, I mean, at least they have set this up to make it look like Alicent was saying, "You will be our king," to him, so he would be presumably that's her son Aegon.
Uh-huh.
So so that is the kind of time jump we're looking at for. I am wondering because like at least at this point, the time jumps are not going to be this drastic anymore. Like for a while at least, they have no reason to jump super far ahead. So at least not for the rest of the season. Maybe towards the latter half of season two, they might, but it just depends. It depends. But nevertheless, I'm wondering if these time jumps might throw some more casual folks off with like one that's this big. You think they have to be worried about that? Like it's like a 10-year jump. So they're gonna jump ahead and now there's two new actresses playing, Rhaenyra and Alicent. They just saw that Alicent just had like a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old, and like now all of a sudden there's a giant like kid here, right? There's like a 10, 12, 16-year-old kid standing here. And like, do you think that like is gonna be any issue for casual people? I think it I'll answer the question myself, I guess, is that like I think they've done a good job showcasing the time jumps and explaining it to in layman's terms.
Preparing, yeah.
Yeah, with very little. Like, they haven't just come out and said, like, 2 years later, because that's, like, the lazy
Mhm.
way of doing it, right? They've never done that, and, like, Ryan Condal even said, one of the showrunners said that in the last time jump we had when the hunt happened, he said that, like, we're just gonna take the audience on the ride and have them just take a leap of faith and understand that, they have to fill in the gaps as to what happened in this 3-year period, right? So, like, they're inherently writing this in a way to not cater to an audience who likes to be spoon-fed information. So
Mm.
that's, like, kind of the flip side of just, like whereas I think they've done a good job of filling in the gaps just by you observing the character dynamics, right? Because 'Cause they're really good at letting you know it they're really great at what Rings of Power is really bad at, right? Like, you understand every character, what they're doing, so much so that they could skip ahead 3 years and you don't skip a beat. You know exactly what all these characters would have done just by getting 1 sentence of dialogue that references something that happened today, right? So, like, they say this event happened today, and you can just assume you know exactly how that would have affected Rhaenyra, like, during that 3-year period of time, right? Like, they're really great at that. So, I feel like it's kind of a I feel like it'll probably be fine for most people, but I could see it throwing some people off if not done well. That's my worry, I guess, anyway, is that they don't, I don't know, make it easy for people who aren't in the know, right? That kind of
Yeah.
feeling.
I feel like Game of Thrones, the original Game of Thrones series, and now this one too, I feel like they expect the audience to be able to piece stuff together, and they expect the audience to be smart. They're not going to do things like you said, like put 2 years later. I mean, there have been things where I mean I've missed stuff. I'm not the brightest bulb in the pack, and there have definitely been over the first series and over this one, there have definitely been times where I've just completely missed a reference to something that came before, or a reference to something that was going to happen later, or an explanation for why something happened. And it takes sometimes it'll take multiple viewings before I think I have every little nuance of the show figured out. So I no, I don't think it'll be an issue. I think anybody that's watched through the original series and anybody that's watched through this up to this point will have no problem making that jump to where they go next.
I definitely have faith in their writing team to establish the fact and make it easy to follow. And like I said, they just do such a good job with their character work. Like that's the
Yeah.
one thing I said that on when we were talking yesterday about the Rings of Power after show segment of the stream. Like on the first episode of the series, you like through pretty much every character's first interaction with other characters, you got them. You knew
Mhm.
what like you knew the characters immediately. After the end of episode 1, you could envision what the characters would do. And that's not because it was just obvious. It's because they did a good job of, for one, the performances were great. So like you bought what they were saying, but like just the writing in general and how they interacted with each other, you just understood them as people, right?
Mhm.
And that's the one thing like I think like Rings of Power, for instance, like doesn't really do a good job at that. Like they just you don't really understand a lot of the motivations, and like they're just like so good at like you just get it. Like you just
Mhm.
you're able to fill in the gaps, and it's really good character work. I like. That's why I like the series and the book so much. Is because it's just about people, and that might be a reason why it's kind of easy to follow too, right? Because you just put yourself in the position of these people. They're all themes that we're familiar with outside of this, you know.
Sure.
I think that's good. Anything else really stick out to you? It's really just, like, big setup from here, so, like, I don't know, like, I don't really think I have anything else that's, like, popping out to me that we didn't cover. I think I covered most of everything that first came to my mind.
No, I mean, it was just another really good episode. I mean, I still think the highlight episode for me so far was episode 3. Um, but like I said, every episode, like every episode does something that I'm just like, I come away and I'm just like, damn, this show's good. And then with this one, it was the wedding and the way they built the tension, and then the that because that entire thing, you just wait. Something's happening. Something's going to happen. You wait. You wait. Wait. And they it's a fine line, but like they know just when to break that tension, when to when they've built it up enough. And
I loved too I just don't, I if you watch The Office, you'll understand this, but as soon as we saw the head Kingsguard guy, he was announcing people as they came into the the hall here, the dinner hall, the dining hall,
yeah,
and it just reminded me of Dwight Schrute at Andy's dinner party when he was just, like, announcing everybody. So, I
that's
don't
right.
know, that's just a connection I made immediately. I was like, "That's so funny." Not that they made that reference, it's just like because if anything, Dwight was just referencing this era, this period of time, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know, I just thought that was funny. The other thing I really liked too was this shot of the dragons,
Oh
like,
yeah.
swooping in because I think, like, honestly, this is, like, the first time they've ever shown the actual visceral speed that these dragons are flying, like,
Hmm.
straight up, and it was the first time we saw Melee's this is Rhaenys, Princess Rhaenys dragon, and this is Melee's the Red Queen, I think is her name, so that's cool, and you can see she's red,
Yeah.
obviously.
So, question: why did they only show two dragons flying? Wouldn't the entire family have come in on dragons?
No, and if you remember, Corlys said, "We have 50% of the dragons." And as you know, we've only seen 2 other dragons. We've seen Syrax, which is Rhaenyra's dragon, and Caraxes, which is Daemon's dragon.
Demons.
There's other dragons in the dragon pit, like, there's lots of them in there, but we don't they don't have any dragon riders right now. They're just, like, whelplings and, like, they don't have any not all dragons end up having a dragon rider necessarily, like, some do, some don't, this is what it is. There's this
Okay.
one dragon, I forget what they call him, his name's, like, Goat Feeder or something, but, like, all he would do is, like, he would just he got out and he just went and just, like, killed a bunch of goats all the time, and it's just, like, he never had a dragon rider, he's just out and does his thing, like, that's kinda, like, why, like, the Hightower and, Maester conspiracy is, like it lends some credence to it because, like, even with, Vhagar was no, is it what's his name? The dragon that is just I think it's Vagar. I'm pretty sure it's Vagar. But the dragon that, Laenor's little sister was talking to, King Viserys about when they were trying to court the 10-year-old, or the
Uh-huh.
12-year-old, whatever her name is. She brings up, like, Vagar because right now, Vagar is the oldest living dragon at this point since Viserys's dragon, who was Aegon the Conqueror's dragon, Baelor the Black Dread, or Balerion the Black Dread, rather. Baelor was Viserys's dad, and so that's why the name escaped me for a minute, or confused, got mixed up for a second. But Balerion the Black Dread was the biggest and oldest dragon ever, but he just recently died. But now Vagar is now, because Balerion's dead, the oldest living dragon. But point being, there are just dragons that, like, the Targaryens, like, don't really have any, tabs on, right? Like, Vagar is literally bigger than every dragon we've seen, and she's just out there. And the Targaryens aren't doing anything to try to bring her back, trying to go find her, like, like, what's she doing? Like,
Mhm.
it's kind of like, it's a bit irresponsible, It's like, you literally it's like, what would our government do if one of our nukes disappeared?
Yeah,
Especially our biggest, best nuke. Like,
yeah.
you'd think that'd be more of a problem. Like, in all honesty, you'd think it'd be something they would care about and they would bring up every once in a while. Like, any sign of Vagar? Like, Damon, have you, Caraxes, like, you guys seen Vagar? Has anyone in the Essos area, like the Stepstones, has anyone mentioned anything about a dragon? Like, because what's she up to? Like, it'd be
Yeah,
nice to have our biggest, oldest dragon back. Like, like, it's just it's a weird and funny thought, but
sure.
it's also funny to see too. Like, I one thing I like that George insisted upon in this series was that all of the knights and, like, the houses would have more colorful regalia and have
Mhm.
things that set them apart from one another. Because, like, everything in the original series was just kinda like grays and blacks. You didn't really have a
Sure.
lot of, like, colors, but now, like, everyone has colors and everything, and, like, he really wanted all the dragons to be unique and look different and be colorful in general. So I like that, like, Sea Smoke is, like, gray, and, uh why did I just forget her name? Maylee's here is all red, and, fucking Caraxes is, like, this deformed looking weird, 20-foot long neck. It's got
Sure.
webbed feet, just like goofiest, weirdest, coolest looking one of them at this point. But then you have, Thyrax, which is like this yellowish gold color, and she has, like, these horns on her head.
Mhm.
So she's, like, completely different than, like, any of the other dragons in her own right, even though she has the more, like, typical body as Melee's and Sea Smoke here, 'cause they look very much more reminiscent to how, like, Drogon and Daenerys' dragons looked. But, like, Melee's rather, you see has all these, like, massive spikes on her neck and just looks super fucking menacing. But then
Yep.
Sea Smoke doesn't really have, like, all those spikes. Like, Sea Smoke very much looks like, one of Daenerys's, what was the name of her? She had one, I forget. Somehow I forget, the other dragon's name besides Drogon. I think she may have named one Vhagar too. Maybe I'm thinking Vhagar as Daenerys is, and the other one is, named something else. I can't remember. Nevertheless, they look the side or, Sea Smoke just kinda looks like one of their dragons. It's like that they look different now. They have unique stuff to them. It's just nice for, even though we haven't seen them a whole terrible bit. Like, this is the first time we've seen, Melee's, but, I mean, we'll be seeing them more soon,
Mhm.
and they looked really good, though. It's always cool to see some dragons, nevertheless.
I
You got
mean,
any
the show's called House of Dragons, so
It's true. Yeah,
they
I would
better keep
expect some
bringing the
dragons.
dragons. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
It would be kind of odd if they were keeping the dragons hidden, right?
Yeah.
No doubt. Damon's still my favorite character at this point in time, I will say. Like,
Probably mine. I don't know. I'd have to give that some more thought. Maybe I'll have an answer for you next week.
It's funny because he's not a super likable guy, but he is at the same time of like, in
Sure.
my mind. Like, he's just got, like, a swagger to him, I guess, and it's just, like, the attitude, like, I don't know. You probably shouldn't
He's
like Damon, honestly, but
to reference our discussion last night, he's kinda like Constantine, except without the good part,
yeah,
which works.
the only good part he has in him, really, is that he loves his family.
Sure.
That's it. Like, after that, like, he's made it painfully clear that he doesn't give a shit about anybody if their name's not Targaryen and maybe Valerian. That's
Yeah.
it. Like, 'cause he's cool with his cousin, obviously, like, we saw that, like we were talking about earlier, but, like, if even his wife wasn't safe from him, like,
Mhm.
and, like, whether or not he actually had the intent to kill her there, he ended the job. Like, like, when the opportunity presented itself, he did it. And the
Mhm.
same thing with, like, making it seem that he was with Rhaenyra and then potentially working with the White Worm to spread that information to get Otto out. If that theory is true, like, he's a pretty cunning guy, and he's a
Yep.
pretty shitty one too, but it's fun to watch. Super fun to watch. Oh boy. You got anything else? Anything else come to mind?
No,
I
just
can't think of anything else.
really enjoying the show. I'm glad I'm yeah, I'll keep saying it, but it was a series I was kinda thinking I might skip, but I'm glad I'm not.
Oh, I know. And I wouldn't fault anybody for having any skepticism because of how, like, the last season of the series ended, right? Like, or the
Yep.
last 2 seasons, you could even say, like, they were both not as good as the ones, that had led up to it, but obviously, it's definitely too early to say of whether or not this will be a better show, but I would say at least as of right now, it's on par. I think it has a stronger first season so far in some ways.
Yeah, I'd have
It's
to
a
go back
more
and watch Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, like, that 1st season grabbed me, though, like,
it
that
did. Especially, like, when spoiler alert, but when Ned gets beheaded at the end,
yeah, oh,
like,
yeah, I
you
mean,
just
that's
like, after you see that, you're just like, "Well, fuck me, I have to see what happens next,"
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah. So that was it's really good. But it's and I also think too, kinda like I always say that it's like comparing Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones is an unfair comparison just by virtue of the material, they're entirely different. It's honestly kinda hard to kind of even fairly compare this show to Game of Thrones because, like, would this show has taken so much from Game of Thrones, like, they're so, like, inherently intertwined,
Mhm.
like, would this show be what it is without Game of Thrones? You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the question. So it's like, we could say, like, if this show is if you think it's better, I think you just have to, I guess, keep in mind, like, that's built upon the success of Game of Thrones, though, because at the time of Game of Thrones, they weren't slinging as much money at Game of Thrones in the beginning as they are into
Sure.
this right away. Like,
Mhm.
right? So, like, Game of Thrones had to build up to getting, the actors being paid 10, 20 million kind of shit per episode or per season. It wasn't like they were playing things real close to the vest with the money for the first few seasons of the show or the original show. So much so that George's we didn't talk about this on the last week with The Hunt. George's he's been on record saying the thing he like most dissatisfied with in the original series was the hunt in the first season when Robert Baratheon went on his hunt and got killed by the boar. Like, I would pull it up, but I don't feel like pulling up the image, but, like, you literally see all the hunt was because we saw in this show it's this grand royal event, right? All the tents, everyone gathered, it was this big celebration. Tons of houses were there, whatever. In the original series, it was literally just Robert, Renly, and, like, 2 Kingsguard or something just walking through the woods.
Yeah,
That was all we saw of the hunt, and he
yeah.
said, like, that was the most, like, disappointing thing that it happened in the show just because like, they didn't have it was really to no fault of anything, it was just, like, they didn't have the money or resources to be able to make this grand, extravagant thing. But now, to my point, they can do that because of the success of the original show. So now they're throwing all this money at it, so I think it's kind of like, in some ways, it's, kind of a given that it should be at least as good, if not better in some ways than the original series, but nevertheless, I'll be happy as long as it's as good as the best parts of Game of Thrones in the end,
Yeah.
because I love that show, and I love the books, so I'm looking forward to the rest of this shit for sure. Goddamn right. You wanna call it early? You got anything else you wanna add?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm fading fast. I gotta get up early, so
I
yeah.
hear you. I hear you, dude. Well,
That
John,
works.
we'll be back next week, but let everybody kn
Hopefully Friday.
Yeah,
Think
you're
we're gonna
thinking
try and
Friday?
shoot for Friday. Yeah.
Yeah. Friday should work, so we'll be back Friday for we'll talk She-Hulk if there's anything to talk about, but as you saw if you watched the stream before, I didn't think there was anything to talk about with She-Hulk, but we were able to come up with like 30, 40 minutes of conversation for that. I was just going through and I'll be putting up those clips from that if you missed the stream. Those clips will be up sometime probably tomorrow, but I was going through and editing all that stuff earlier, so nevertheless, I was surprised to see that it ended up lasting as long as it did because like I literally said a couple times. I think I said off the top like I think we're gonna have to not do any more She-Hulk after shows because there's not
Yeah.
really anything to talk about, but nevertheless, John, tell everybody where they can find you online.
I'm over at Nightwing_J at the Twitters.
And you can follow me just simply here at Sir Rob Bifo. Like I said, we should be back next Friday to do a She-Hulk after show, given there's anything to talk about. Presumably, I'm sure we can find something to talk about with it anyway. Especially, we'll never know. If it's really bad, we'll be able to discuss how bad it was. But if it's good, well, at least, we'll talk about the good stuff in it. We'll just have to see. But then, of course, though, Rings of Power will be happening on Friday as well. So we'll have our Rings of Power after show. So I'm hoping that show kicks it into a little bit of a higher gear given the last episode kind of went in that direction. We'll see though. But you can follow me here at Sir Rob Bifo once again. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, share it, do all that sorts of fun stuff. But then other than that, let us know what you thought of this episode of House of the Dragon down in the comment section below. And of course, we will be back next week for House of the Dragon next Sunday. So come back then. But elsewise, we will see you next time.